Witam serdecznie wszystkich słuchaczy podcastu Tolkien, czyli z powrotem. Podcast ten stworzony został z myślą o wszystkich miłośnikach Tolkiena, zarówno tych bardziej zaawansowanych, jak i tych, którzy swą przygodę z jego twórczością dopiero zaczynają. Ja nazywam się Łukasz Neubauer, jestem filologiem, mediewistą, nauczycielem akademickim, autorem różnego rodzaju publikacji na temat autora Władcy Pierścieni. Podczas cotygodniowych spotkań poruszamy kwestie związane z osobą Tolkiena, jego twórczością literacką oraz naukową, przyjaźnią z innymi inklingami i ogólną postawą życiową. Zapraszam serdecznie. W dzisiejszym odcinku jestem sam. Wysłuchać będziecie mogli natomiast mojego referatu, który wygłosiłem mniej więcej miesiąc temu na konferencji w Akwizgranie w Niemczech. Była to 20. już edycja konferencji organizowanej przez Deutsche Tolkien Gesellschaft, czyli niemieckie towarzystwo tolkienowskie, które powstało mniej więcej 20 lat temu właśnie i co roku organizuje konferencję naukową poświęconą twórczości Tolkiena. Tegorocznym tematem były forma publikacji jego różnych dzieł. Jak wiemy, Tolkien, mimo już nie żyje od ponad 50 lat, jego dzieła nadal są wydawane, o których pewnie nawet w niektórych przypadkach by się zdziwił, że w ogóle takie pozycje pojawiają się, takie tytuły na rynku. Na pewno się by tego zupełnie nie spodziewał. Natomiast konferencja dotyczyła takich kilku ciekawych kwestii, między innymi tego, w jaki sposób wydawać te dzieła, czy w formie popularnych książek, czy też może w jakiejś bardziej naukowej formie. I tego zresztą dotyczył mój referat, do którego wysłuchania zapraszam. Jest to referat wygłoszony w języku angielskim.
Thank you, yes, and thank you, Thomas, for introducing me. I'm not sure if it's my area of expertise. I would like to say something about what I would like to see and read. As all of us, obviously, I love Tolkien's fiction. Yes, I love The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit. These are amongst some of my favorite books. But being a medievalist, I'm naturally also interested in Tolkien's non-fiction. Non-fiction and his translations and editions of medieval works. So, of course, I would like to see at least some of them published one day. Not many of them have been published so far. And today I would like to say something about those that have been published. I'll try to put them into some categories. I came up with 4. And also perhaps try to predict what is there to come. Yes, those that might be published one day. I'm sure you all agree with that. Perhaps to Tolkien's surprise, if he were alive, you probably agree that Tolkien was or is a prolific writer. He's constantly writing new books. For the past 17 years, since the publication of The Children of Húrin, Tolkien has written, in quotation marks of course, 13 volumes. That's quite a lot, I think. He seems to be far more productive than many other writers in the genre. Take George R.R. Martin, perhaps. How many books has he written over the past 10 years? No, sorry, that's a bad example. So I'm sure Tolkien will be surprised to see some of these titles. He probably never considered some of them, probably, for sure, never considered some of them to be worthy of being published. And some of them were never finished. So here we are. I think that's, the last 13 books from Tolkien. So, do we really need so many books by Tolkien? do we? I mean, well, it depends on who you are. It depends on what your expectations are. It depends on what you would like to read. Yeah, so I'll try to look at it from different perspectives. The die-hard fans and collectors of Tolkien, well, they might just buy everything as long as it has the name of Tolkien on the cover. And I personally know such people. I have a lot of respect for them. I also collect books, although I've never seen a point in buying 20 different editions of The Hobbit, but that's another a matter for another discussion. So, okay, so that's one approach. But scholars, I can speak for myself now, scholars will buy all the works attributed to Tolkien, hoping perhaps that they will find them useful for their work. Yes, I mean, I have quite a lot of them, so what am I talking about? But book publishers, they of course will continue to release new Tolkien material as long as there's market for it. And we have seen, as I said, quite a few volumes published over the course of the last 15, 20 years or so, and apparently there is market for it. But of course, editors will continue editing and re-editing the works of Tolkien as long as the publishers are willing to have them published. Of course, not Christopher Tolkien, that's no longer possible, but there are other people, Carl Hostetter, Brian Sibley, yes, they've done really a lot of good work recently. And finally, all this, the way I see it, all this seems to be correlated somehow with the success or failure of the film industry and the sale of all kinds of merchandise. So as long as there are films being made, there will always be market for new Tolkien books. Of course, scholarly editions, popular editions, and so on. You may have noticed if you look carefully. We have an instance of what we call product placement. 2 volumes from Working Tree Publishers. So, both highly recommended. It's not this one, no. It's Music in Tolkien's Work and Beyond, and then Tolkien and the Classical World. But yeah, of course, all of them very good. Right, so in the near future, we may see the publication of some new Tolkien material, but we may also expect to see editions of the texts that have already been published. So who knows? Perhaps one day we may get a new annotated 300-page long edition of Leave by Niggle. Who knows? Or perhaps a 200-page long edition of Mr. Bliss with an in-depth analysis of its indebtedness to the Imran narratives and newly found sketches of the illustrations that we know very well. Or perhaps Bilbo's Last Song with its earlier alliterative version of the poem and the long preface by John Garth or Tom Shippey. Or perhaps finally Tolkien's translation of the Book of Jonah with the facing Hebrew or French text and the long philological commentary. French because Tolkien actually translated it from French rather than Hebrew. Yes, but as I said, I'm a medievalist. I would like to see some of other works published too, such as the alliterative translation of Beowulf. Yes, I wonder if it's finally coming out, if it is. And of course, Tolkien's lecture notes. Yes, some of them were published were published 10 years ago when the prose translation was when it came out in 2014 14, I believe. Yes, so that came with, at least 100 pages or so of Tolkien's comments, yes, from his lecture notes. And I've seen, I haven't seen his lecture notes, but I have access to the notes that a friend of mine, Professor McKinnell, the notes he made during the lectures he attended when Tolkien was still teaching at Oxford University, and they look very promising. The lecture notes, the notes of the students, but what about the Tolkien's own lecture notes? These could be really fascinating. Right, I would also like to see Tolkien's essay on the Goths. That would be wonderful, along with some translations of he wrote some poems in Gothic, yes, so that could be somehow combined. Yes. So who knows? One day all these may be published, because these are titles of works that really were written by Tolkien. They do exist, yes.
Do we know how long is the ulterior motive?
No, probably not as hefty as this one.
It would be more on Lewis than on Tolkien.
Yes, but these are just essays. So I suppose some of them might be like 10 or 20 pages long, but with nice introduction, notes, illustrations and all that. We could make a 100-page long volume. Who knows? So obviously I would like to see some of them published, and I dare say some of them will. Sooner or later, but when, how, and most importantly, in what form? This is what I'm going to talk about soon. We know that some of his academic works have been published, or actually his lecture notes, yes, edited by his former students, yes, Finn Hengist and the Old English Exodus. None of them actually seem to have been very popular. I mean, Finn Hengist has been republished. You can buy it as a paperback now. But the Old English Exodus is around Abbey's. You can't buy it unless you're very rich, because I think there are only 3,000 copies in the world.
It was expensive at the time.
Yeah, I know someone who has it, but that's all I know. But I would like to see it published again one day. But I'm not sure it's going to be very popular. Anyway, it's quite hermetic as far as the content is concerned. Some of these scholarly or editions of more like scholarly texts have been published, and I think they're quite successful. Tolkien's essay on fairy stories, and also quite recently the Battle of Maldon and the Homecoming of Bergnoth. That second book has also incorporated into it Tolkien's lecture notes, along with illustrations and so on and so forth. So that's, I think, about 180 pages. Without all that could be just a small brochure rather than a volume. Right. Now, Tolkien would probably be quite surprised, as I said, to see some of these works published. But okay, so as I said, I'd say there are like four principal ways in which Tolkien's non-fiction and translations of medieval texts have been published so far. So I would like to take a look at each of them in turn, using always just a single text as an example. And I will argue that each method has its advantages and disadvantages. There's not a single one that I will just go, oh, that's perfect, it must be done like this. No. So here we are. We start with what I call limited scholarly edition. Yes, we all know what scholarly edition means. How about limited? Well, limited not necessarily in availability, but it's limited if you consider the number of the readers, the people who are going to read the book. I'll just put it simply, it's not for everyone. It's a scholarly edition, yes, of Tolkien's famous essay Beowulf, the Monsters and the Critics. So what are the features? What are the pros and cons? Well, first of all, it includes not just a single, but two versions of Tolkien's lecture or essay, if you will. So for scholars, that's a really good thing. That's because you can compare the two texts. Also, the whole book is very well researched, heavily annotated, has a detailed study of the manuscript itself, not the Beowulf manuscript, but the manuscript of the essay. Its structural evolution, all kinds of notes, explanatory notes, textual notes, of course an appendix. That's a sine qua non for Tolkien scholars. An index, and, well, you get a volume of more than 500 pages. As I said, not for everyone, but for scholars, that's a dream come true. Well, what about the other people? What about the mortals? Well, it's not a work of fiction. Some people will not quite like it simply because it's not a work of fiction. It may also be rather difficult to understand for an average reader. The style, somewhat dry, scholarly-like, yes, this might not be of interest to a non-specialist reader. Another thing, academic books can be very expensive sometimes, and they have small print runs. So when the print is exhausted, well, the price of the book may be very high. I was lucky to buy this book about 5 years ago. If you want to buy it today, here's the price. Was it? Nearly $5,000, yes. I'm not selling my copy for that price now. It might be the first edition, I don't know, but anyway, it's not available as such as I know at the moment. Yeah? So they can be very expensive. Okay, the second category is what I call the cheap scholarly edition. Well, it's inexpensive, obviously, and many of them, I'm not saying every single one, but many of them are available from all the major online stores. What else? I would also argue that they have rather attractive cover artwork, promising some kind of action, right, if you look carefully. Two warriors, and there's a looming promise of a conflict. Yes. Also, seeing this from the point of view of a medieval scholar, these are very carefully edited lecture notes, of course including preface, introduction, the texts, both in Old English and in Tolkien's translation, textual commentaries, glossary, appendices, of course. Yes, so it's also a very nice volume. I'd like to see it in hardback. It was published back in the 80s, but since then you can only buy the paperback edition, and mine is falling apart. Has been used quite extensively. But then I think it would be rather risky for HarperCollins, yes, to have it published in a hardback edition, either standard or deluxe edition, because not many people will probably buy it. Also, many non-specialist readers may feel cheated, yes, believing that what they are seeing is just another tale from the popular writer of fantasy. And even I'll argue that the paperback edition doesn't really enjoy much popularity. I don't think it has been translated in any language, into any language. And I looked at Amazon and compared The Lord of the Rings, which ranks yes, that's first. It's Finn and Hengist. It ranks. The rank is 7,195 in general readership, whereas The Lord of the Rings 193. So that's a bit of a difference. And also The Lord of the Rings ranks second in fiction classics for young adults. So if you like The Lord of the Rings, you are young adults. And when it comes to finger hangers, it's number 192 in mystical poetry. Mystical poetry. Okay, let's move on to number 3. Well, a new Tolkien text might be published in a journal. It's an academic journal. And for instance, the Homecoming of Berknoth was once published in Tolkien Studies, along with Thomas Honegger's careful, in-depth study of it. And when it comes to like more literary texts, but the texts that have much to do with, well, not so much medieval literature, although it's really difficult to say whether Kalevala is a medieval text or not. But anyway, it was published about 10 years ago in Tolkien Studies. So, what are the pros and cons of this kind of approach? Well, specialists may find it a welcome addition to some of the other texts that are available in the journal. There's the articles, notes, book reviews, and yes, another text from Tolkien. Yeah? So that's something we look forward to, I suppose. However, some academic journals are not always available to the wider readership, yes? And also those which are available may sometimes be very expensive, like Tolkien Studies, I'm afraid. Right? Although some of them are published online, so that's a good thing. Yes. Now, an average non-specialist reader may not always want to buy an academic journal, yes, in which only a certain proportion contains the actual works of Tolkien. And in this particular case, if you consider this volume of Tolkien Studies, it's like 400 pages long. But if you think of the text itself, the story of Clerver, it's 70, 80 pages long. So, and the rest is if you're a non-specialist, the rest is just some boring articles, notes, and book reviews. I mean, who needs it? Mm-hmm. Yes. Anyway, the text itself was later published as a book. So first it came out in Tolkien Studies, and then revised as a single volume. And finally, the fourth approach, in my humble opinion, the most successful for them all, though not without its flaws. And I'm using the recently published The Battle of Maldon together with the Homecoming of Berknoth as an example. First of all, it's rather inexpensive. I'm not sure if it's available in paperback, but
it's in the US.
It is, okay. But the hardback edition is not very expensive, like £15, maybe 20. There's also the deluxe edition that's more expensive, yes, but it should be perfectly available if you want a copy. Also, if you look at the cover, I think the artwork is rather attractive, yes, and also within the text itself, there are 4 vignettes from Bill Sanderson. They're very nice. Another feature is that it comes with a digitally remastered recording by Tolkien of the Homecoming of Berknoth, although this is where I'm really angry at HarperCollins, because they published the standard hardback edition with nothing additional, and then the deluxe edition, which actually has the recording. And I don't think I really need to buy both. Anyway, I had the recording before that, so... If you look inside, it includes a really short introduction from Peter Grauskas, and it's a kind of introduction that should be comprehensible also to non-specialists. It's written that kind of way. And if you consider the rest of the text. Well, the two main texts, that's Tolkien's translation, prose translation of the Battle of Maldon, although I'm nearly convinced there's also an alliterative translation of the Battle of Maldon, well, at least some fragments of it, and it's not in the book. Well, but then there is also the Homecoming, which is a rather well-known text, and this is followed by 6 appendices. Perfect from the point of view of scholars, and not only, because the first 3 of them are Tolkien's own lecture notes. They have been re-edited with the aim of improving the understanding of the core of the book, so the Battle of Maldon and the Homecoming of Bernulf. And I would say that it's very similar, almost the same approach is taken in The Legend of Sigurd and Gudrun and Beowulf. So in my opinion, these are rather, this is a very successful approach. And this is followed by the editor's notes in the last 2 appendices, and I would say that they're not overwhelming for the people who are not specialists. So that's, I think, the right approach. Well, the only disadvantage is that the first 3 appendices are just a selection from Tolkien's lecture notes. So this is a bit of a disappointment if you would like to see all of it. Oh, sorry, there's one more thing. Well, looking at the cover, I think some non-specialist readers may also think that this is a fantasy novel. Yeah, but okay. So anyway, I would like to draw some conclusions. I will argue that there's no single method that's better than others. I wouldn't say that the last method is so much better than the first one. Each of them has its pros and cons, advantages and disadvantages, but I think that if we want to have some of Tolkien's major academic texts or his lecture notes published, I think they really have to be accompanied by some kind of introduction, rather extended commentary, and it would be a good idea if they could also at the same time accompany some major text. So if there is another edition of Beowulf, I mean Tolkien's translation of Beowulf, the alliterative Beowulf, whether it's complete or not, I think should also come with some more lecture notes, and perhaps Tolkien's essay, which was originally to be published as an introduction, I think, to someone's book, but then in the end it came out as On Translating Beowulf. It was published in The Monsters, the Critics, and other essays. So these are some of the approaches. As I said, there's not a single one that I would venture to call being perfect, yes, but I would say that the last one is probably the best, as it then in this way will be available to both scholars and the more general public. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
To wszystko w dzisiejszym odcinku podcastu Tolkien, czyli tam i z powrotem. Następny już za tydzień, a jego gościem będzie ponownie dr Przemysław Grabowski-Górniak. Rozmawiać będziemy na temat książki Rudy, Jill i jego pies. Nie zapomnijcie polubić mojego podcastu, skomentować i udostępnić innym słuchaczom. Będę również wdzięczny za wsparcie za pośrednictwem strony Patronite, albowiem dzięki waszej hojności podcast ten będzie mógł się dalej rozwijać. Do usłyszenia.